Some of us are hopeful and excited about this recent filing in Aaron Spencer's case. I don't pretend to be a lawyer. We have creators that are legal, that are going to go through all these documents. But I could do a read through with you. So let's go ahead and get started. The motion to dismiss felony information on Fifth Amendment grounds. And in the introduction here it says, the court should dismiss the felony information because it violates the grand jury requirements of the Fifth Amendment in the United States Constitution and is not a license for the state to pursue such an unconstitutional course of conduct. 2. Following the Supreme Court's incorporation of the Sixth Amendment jury anonymity requirements, nearly every core criminal procedural protection in the Bill of Rights has been incorporated to the states through the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment. The court's incorporation doctrine under the 14th Amendment ensures that the minimum content of the due process is not subject to erosion by state legislatures. 3. The last unincorporated criminal procedural right of the Fifth Amendment, grand jury clause, whether to require state to comply strictly with the grand jury clause was not last considered in Hurtado v. California. The precedent, if read today in light of recent decisions and historical precedents, cannot justify a process that strips criminal defendants of a foundational procedural protection. Accordingly, Spencer respectfully requests dismissal of the felony information in this case. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but what we have here is the argument 2. Requiring a grand jury for the felony charges is deeply rooted in history and tradition because it protects fundamental principles of liberty and justice. The grand jury clause of the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution provides no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless a presentment of indictment of a grand jury, which they absolutely did not do for Aaron Spencer. Like the U.S. Constitution, the Arkansas Constitution contains a grand jury requirement, and so did the 1868 version of the same document, Arkansas Constitution 1874. The purpose of the grand jury requirement is to limit the defendant's jeopardy to offenses charged by a group of his fellow citizens acting independently of either prosecuting attorney or judge. I think we all have our thoughts on that. The history of the grand jury dates back more than 1,000 years. So we have 1,000 years of it being done this way, and they want to do it this way now. From the Constitution of Clarendon and Assize of Clarendon of the 14th century, Edwardian Advance in Criminal Procedural. It goes on and on here, guys. This goes all the way back to the 17th century cases that are listed here, where they saw the grand jury emerge in valued protection of individual liberties against encroachment by the Crown through politically motivated criminal procedure. The Supreme Court acknowledged the vulnerable history of the grand jury requirement, including the presence in Clause 39 of Magna Carta, and the debates on whether it should be interpreted to include not only felonies, but also misdemeanor and petty offenses in Hurtado versus California. However, the court ultimately decided not to incorporate the grand jury clause against the states, holding the state legislature were free to newly devise any legal proceedings enforced by public authority, so long as they preserve the principles, liberty, and justice. Tell me, do you think liberty and justice principles were followed here? I most certainly do not, but I am not a lawyer. Now, although Hurtado explained that the grand jury requirement was not incorporated against the states, the decision did not excuse states from ensuring their criminal procedures offered. And it goes on and on to list countless I mean, over 20 examples. I'm sorry, over 30 examples as to how that was not done in this case, which many of us have been saying from the beginning. But again, I'm not a lawyer and don't pretend to be. We have lawyers on here for that, and they're going to be doing their videos on this. Let's just hope that this is something that we could finally say can get the right decision made on this case, which is charges to be dismissed for Aaron Spencer, which never should have been brought in the first place.